What is up, everybody, and welcome to more FLW videos. For those of you who haven't seen my videos for a while, it's actually because my main channel was hacked and then unfortunately taken down, so I've been uploading on the second channel to get this content out to you. And for those of you out there who have been subscribing, seriously, thank you so much. It really gives me a boost of confidence to know that you guys absolutely believe in me, and I want to say thank you so much. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Until we can get the main channel back, I'm going to be uploading Pokemon Go content here. And in today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about the Ultra League. Many players, especially in PvP, if you've been doing the Sylph Arena, for example, are very familiar with Great League Pokemon. But with the Ultra League, I mean, there's a lot of questions, but then secondly, I don't think it's actually going to shake out the way that people think it's going to. We're going to be taking a look at the top 10 Ultra League Pokemon and why I think some of them actually aren't going to be as viable as what you think they are. And then, of course, take a look at a second set of Pokemon that are going to be, honestly, some better options and ones that you will more likely see than some of the top 10. So if you do enjoy this type of content and it is helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So the first two Pokemon that we are going to talk about today is actually going to be both versions of Giratina. Now, as far as the top ranked Pokemon in the Ultra League is concerned, it is the Giratina altered form and not the origin, so the one that's not as attack heavy. So with this Pokemon in particular, you're wanting to use Shadow Claw, Dragon Claw, and then Ancient Power. But you have to ask yourselves the question, are people going to be able to invest in this? Now, I do think it is going to be a very popular option among those who have the resources, have enough candy, 100 candies to be able to unlock that secondary charge move. But to be honest, in this case, Giratina Altered Form as well as Origin are very expensive Pokemon to, of course, use. So I only see the very hardcore players actually going in and unlocking a secondary charge move. So you might end up seeing this Pokemon quite a bit in the Ultra League, but I think the caveat to that is you may not see it with the secondary move unlock. So just kind of keep that in mind. Don't know exactly what it's going to end up using, but if you end up checking out some of the key matchups, it's kind of a big deal because we've got Mew, Mewtwo, and then Machamp that are actually within the top 10 that we will be talking about today. And then as far as the top counters, I mean, what, some normal type Pokemon? Who in the heck is going to use those? I do think Shiftry is going to be a pretty interesting option. We're going to see Shiftry coming up multiple times on this list. So we definitely want to kind of take a look out for some of those top counters and maybe think about those. And then, of course, the counters to those counters. Just kind of think about that. Have that in the back of your mind. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next Pokemon, which is Giratina Origin Form. So once again, it is going to be Giratina, but it is going to have a little bit different of a moveset where we've got Shadow Claw, Ominous Wind, and then Shadow Ball. So in this case, you're going straight up Ghost with it. Shadow Ball does a ton of damage, even if it's not a super effective situation. But unfortunately, Giratina Origin Form has like a very high attack stat, so that could affect it a little bit in the performance. But if you go ahead and check out some of the key matchups, you're in a situation where we're seeing a lot of these Pokemon, and like I said before, I mean, it counters a lot of the top 10 Pokemon that we will be talking about today. But are those Pokemon actually going to be used? I mean, Giratina Origin Form, once again, unlocking that secondary charge move, that's going to be very expensive. I only see kind of the hardcore people doing it, and if they're in rank 9, rank 10, you're not going to really see them as much, especially with a secondary charge move. For Giratina Origin Form, I could see people using it with Shadow Claw and Shadow Ball, but as far as unlocking secondary charge move, I mean, you're going to have to really be invested to be able to do that. But if you go ahead and check out some of the top counters, we're starting to see like some of those normal Pokemon that we've seen before, like Kangaskhan, which is kind of interesting. And then, of course, Weavile, which is showing up once, but we'll see that a couple more times as well. So now let's go ahead and move on to the third one. I honestly think that Mew is one of those Pokemon that is just kind of a pipe dream. It seems good in concept because it just has so many moves, like 20 fast moves, 30 charge moves, you know, whatever. But if you ask anybody who has gone through and TM'd for a Mew, it is a nightmare. So for now, yes, Mew may be technically in the third position, but you're going to have an insane amount of charge moves to get the specific moveset to be very good with Mew. Until we end up getting some type of TM system where we can choose the move, I honestly think you should not prepare to go up against a Mew because it's going to be so difficult for people to TM over to it. Once again, I think it's going to be the really hardcore PvP players doing this, but you're talking about rank 9, rank 10. If you're getting in through rank 1 through 5, maybe up to 6, 7, I honestly would be shocked if you ended up seeing somebody with a Mew in practice. I just don't see it happening because of the team situation. Mew is just at a huge disadvantage as far as the movesets or obtaining the movesets is concerned. So now, when we move on to the 4th position, now this is going to kind of be an interesting one because Reggie still dominated in the Great League. Oh my gosh, I saw so many Reggie steals with Lock On, Flash Cannon, and Focus Blast, that exact combination. So there could be people who already have a Pokemon kind of ready for the Great League and they say, you know what, I already have one, I've unlocked a secondary charge move, I'm just going to go ahead and power it up, get it up to 2,500, and then maybe get another one at some point in time, and have it for the Great League. But it's one of the situations where it's like, are people really going to invest in another Reggie Steel, or are people going to bump it up and eventually, once we cycle back down to the Great League again, maybe get another one ready? It'll be kind of interesting to see that. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these top counters. Hariyama, first time we've seen that. We've got a couple of Fire-type Pokemon. So Blaziken, actually going to be interesting, that we will talk about when we get into kind of like the more realistic picks. And then Infernape is kind of interesting as well. But if you go ahead and check out some of these key matchups, what you're kind of seeing in this case is a lot of these top Pokemon taking down these top Pokemon, but realistically speaking, how many of them are we actually going to see? I don't think it's going to be as much as what we might think it would be. Up next is Swampert. Now, I would say that Swampert is going to be one of the first Pokemon that actually will be used. You've got a great Pokemon. You've, of course, got access to that community day, which a lot of people have. But then, thirdly, 10,000 Stardust to unlock a secondary charge move and only 25 candy. As far as resources are concerned, this is like the first budget Pokemon that we have seen on this list. You're going with Mudshot, Hydro Cannon, Earthquake in this case. Maybe think about doing Sludge Wave instead, just in case you could maybe try to counter something like a Venusaur, for example. But anyways, if you go ahead and check this out, as far as the top counters for it are concerned, just a lot of grass-type Pokemon. Tropius could potentially be used. I don't see a lot of people using those other options, to be honest. Maybe something like a Venusaur or a Meganium could be a solid one, but we'll have to see. But if you check this out, it's doing good against Giratina, it's doing good against Mew, and then it's doing good against Mewtwo, Armored Edition. So I'm actually liking Swampert as just a general pick to try to counter some of those Pokemon. I think that a lot of people are going to be using maybe something like a Charizard, and then Mewtwo Armored for sure. But to be honest, like I said, I think Swampert's going to be like the first pick that, for me, is an absolute must. So just think about some counters to it in case people use it. Number 6 is Cresselia. So Cresselia is kind of interesting. I actually think more people are going to want to use it for the Ultra League than what they do for the Great League, because it was so difficult to get it into the Great League because of the way the IVs had to work. You had to have a very low friendship to be able to trade to get it below 1500 CP, but as far as accessibility is concerned, having a Cresselia in the Ultra League is going to be way easier because of that. Of course, use Confusion, Aurora Beam, and then Moonblast. So go ahead and check these moves out. You don't want to use Future Sight in that case. So if you go ahead and check out again, I mean, we're seeing a lot of the Giratina and countering that. So here's a counter to Swampert, a counter to Machamp. So I don't know. I mean, Cresselia seems like a really good option. And as far as the counters to it, we are seeing a Shift Tree, like we said before, and then of course a Weavile. So I'm trying to point out some of these common Pokemon that we are seeing quite a bit, because that's going to be a huge deal as to how good you end up doing in the Ultra League. Up next, we've got Regirock. So very similar situation to Registeel, where we are going with Lockdown, we're going with Focus Blast, and then finally Stone Edge. But the difference is that Regirock doesn't really rank out that well in the Great League, so maybe people could end up dedicating a Regirock to be in the Ultra League, and then maybe leave Registeel in the Great League, just kind of up to you. But as far as the top counters are concerned, we're seeing Mew, we're seeing Cresselia, we're seeing Charizard. Charizard's just going to be a more common option in my opinion. But like I said before, I don't think people are going to use Mew as much, but you're seeing it kind of pop up. And as far as the top counters, I mean, it's pretty much just going to be those fighting type Pokemon. And it's looking like Machamp's actually going to be a pretty good option, to be honest. We got a lot of Pokemon that are weak to that fighting type. And speaking of it, we've got Machamp in at the 8th position. So very excited about this Pokemon. We've got Counter, Cross Chop, and Rock Slide. So forget your Dynamic Punch, get yourself the Cross Chop, and then get yourself Rock Slide. If you've got a Legacy Stone Edge, Rock Slide is better than Stone Edge, so you'll definitely want to go ahead and tee him over to this ideal moveset. And then as far as the key matchups are concerned, Lapras is fairly common, which is kind of interesting that it is going to end up doing like fairly good against it, but with that Rock Slide, I mean, that is a huge deal. And then secondly, we've got Registeel. That's a fairly common one as well, or I think it will be. And then as far as what you would use to counter it, we've of course got some psychic typing, and then as well as some of the fairy types. So are we going to see a lot of fairy types? Maybe Togekiss. I think Togekiss will probably be the most popular out of these 5. So definitely have to look out for it. But I think Machamp is definitely looking good in the Ultra League. So I'm personally very excited about that. Up next is Armored Mewtwo. Now this is going to be so interesting. So for Armored Mewtwo, you're going to want to use Confusion, Rock Slide, and Dynamic Punch. Now keep in mind, I mean, that of course isn't Side Strike or anything like that, but that is the ideal moveset for Armored Mewtwo in this case to at least get the best coverage across all of the Pokemon. And as far as the key matchups, Charizard showing up, Togekiss showing up, Machamp showing up, and then Gliscor. Gliscor is also in the top 10, so a lot of very popular options are going to be countered with Mewtwo Armored, especially if you can unlock a secondary charge move, so that'll be interesting. And then top counters, I don't think that many people are going to use a Spirit Tomb. Shiftry could end up being a popular option. Giratina Origin Form could end up being popular as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how many people choose to use Mewtwo Armored. And of course, what moveset are they going to go with? Are people just going to say screw it and go with Side Strike? I don't know. We're going to end up having to see. And then finally, in at the number 10 position, we've got Gliscor. So I actually have a Gliscor ready for PvP in the Ultra League. I'm just kind of deciding on if I want to use it or not. I still would have to do some TMs. But anyway, so what we're going to use is Fury Cutter, Night Slash, and then Earthquake. And as far as the key matchups, check this out. Some very, very common Pokemon. Even Alolan Muck could end up being a kind of popular option as well. So, very popular Pokemon. And as far as the actual top counters, I don't really see a lot of people using these Pokemon. In my own opinion, yes, it's going to do great against some top Pokemon. But as far as the counters to it, you're talking about some Ice types. Well, I mean, what is on this list that you would see people actually using in the Ultra League? Probably not some common options, but who knows? If enough people end up using Gliscor, I'm sure that the community will adjust in that way. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and get into like the 11 through 20 because I think some of these are a little bit more, I guess, usable. Like people would actually use them. So number 1, we've got Alolan Muck. I could easily see this Pokemon becoming a viable option. It's accessible. It's not as expensive. We've got Venusaur, of course, with that dangerous Frenzy Plant and Sludge Bomb. I love using it and do plan to use it. And then we've got Blaziken actually going with a double fire type moveset with Blast Burn and Blaze Kick. And then, of course, using counters. So, yeah, look out for Blaziken. I'm going to say Lugia is a little bit more on the expensive side. Heracross is interesting if you have yourself a Heracross. Of course, with it being a regional Pokemon, maybe that many people don't really have it, but that's kind of an interesting one. Dragonite's also interesting as well. Lucario also kind of a popular option. Meganium also popular. So when I'm looking at this top 11 through 20, I'm seeing not only a lot of viable Pokemon, but accessible Pokemon. And viable and accessible means a lot of people could end up using these. So kind of go through this list, end up looking at Pokemon that you think people will actually end up using, and either think about it from the perspective of you want to be that person actually using them if you can afford it, if you can unlock the secondary charge, it's going to be very difficult to beat, or do you want to be the person that they're going to kind of counter the predictable picks? Whatever it is, I hope this video was helpful to you, and I will see you next time. If you want to develop a deeper connection, I would highly recommend you to check out Patreon. We've got a lot of really cool things going on over there. Check out all of these supporters that we have. We are almost up to 100. We are also posting some special content, some behind the scenes work. And if that is the type of thing that interests you, I would highly recommend you to check it out.